Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this pre-recorded presentation about Stage 3 of the Village of Cumberland's Liquid Waste Management Plan. The goal of this presentation is to give you an overview of the planning work that's underway for wastewater management in the village. We're going to talk about what's been done, what's happening now, and what's to come. It's a really important topic in Cumberland, and so we're really glad you're here to learn more. My name is Colleen, and I am here as technical support today. But with me is Paul Nash, our subject matter expert and the Liquid Waste Management Plan Coordinator, who will be delivering the presentation. So with that, Paul, I will hand the mic over to you to walk us through the slides.
Thanks, Colleen, and good evening, everybody, wherever you may be watching and whatever time it is. It's great to be talking wastewater and liquid waste again at Cumberland. Just plan for this presentation, go through the LWMP, what it is, a little bit of history on how we got here and what we have done. And then the project that is actually in progress, the wastewater upgrades, we'll touch upon that and finish off by how we finish the actual liquid waste management planning process. So that's the Coles Notes version. Let's get into the detail. And the first question, what is a liquid waste management plan? Which is a very important question to answer. What is it and why are we doing it? Right. A provincially defined process for developing a long-term plan for managing wastewater and other liquid wastes. That's quite a mouthful, but that actually is what it is for Cumberland. It's mostly about wastewater. Septage is not a big deal for other municipalities that do this. They might even have industrial waste to consider and so on. But for Cumberland, it's mostly about the wastewater. The plan process, a lot of technical study, public consultation, of which we have done in the past, and this presentation here is a part of it. At the end, we produce a capital P plan that is actually a regulatory instrument. It becomes a piece of law that you are required to follow this plan. Within that plan is a strategic wastewater plan for any upgrades that are needed that we haven't already done to meet these regulatory requirements. And it also includes financial plan and a borrowing authorization to pay for the stuff. So that if the municipality can't say we don't have enough money to pay for it, you're given the authority to borrow money for it. More about that later. But those are the three elements of the plan. And the plan itself has 3 stages to produce it. First stage, you identify everything and the needs of the regulatory requirements, aspirational goals, and then constraints, opportunities, the limits, the possibilities. You develop a whole bunch of ideas, turn these into options, all sorts of weird and wonderful ideas, and eventually you whittle them down to a short list of the best ones. Then stage 2, you actually do some serious technical study of these shortlisted options, and the evaluation of them is against what were the original goals, needs, constraints, and opportunities. Which of the options best meet or best satisfy all of those goals, constraints, opportunities? And then the third stage is how to implement that preferred option, and a whole bunch more study. And then finally you adopt it and get going on it. And that's where we are now, is stage 3. Right, so why are we at stage 3? Because we've already done stage 1 and 2. But long before that, wastewater began happening in Cumberland many moons ago. Over a century ago, the wastewater system began. And until 1968, it was piped directly to Maple Lake Creek. Permit was built in 1960. Lagoons were built in 1968. And 1997, there was a major amendment to the permit that authorizes the wastewater discharge, improved requirements for treatment, and which, believe it or not, still haven't been met. That's part of what the current project is, but there was all sorts of studies done to work out how we would meet these requirements. And we came up with a plan, and here we are. So stage 3 is now to finalize this planning stage. Just an overview here of where things are. We have Cumberland over here, the center of the universe, of course, and then in my world, the brightest star in that universe is the wastewater lagoons, highlighted here in yellow. That's Maple Lake Creek in blue. So the water from the lagoons goes into Maple Lake Creek, into the Trent River, and then eventually over here into Baines Sound. So we'd like to have this water as clean as possible to protect those downstream areas, but that hasn't been the case in the past. And that is a problem, right? So the treatment is poor quality. We've been required since 1997 to do major upgrades, but some unusual situations for Cumberland, these very high flows in winter, as much as what Courtenay Comox is on a normal day, what we have on a wet day. And then in summer, Maple Lake Creek dries up, and at that point, our treated water is the creek. So if we want a clean creek, we need to put clean water into it. So high quantity winter, high quality treatment in summer, and it is difficult to have one treatment system that does both. Not impossible, but it is difficult. And to do both at the same time is really difficult. And that was the goal of our LWMP process in 2016 to 2018, was to work out what it is we're going to do. And we were able to combine the stages into one. We still went through them sequentially, but just one report. Formed a public advisory committee and 18 meetings over those 2 years, and with thanks to the volunteers for a lot of hours that went into it. Open houses, site tours, presentation and input from Comox First Nation, particularly interested in protecting the downstream water quality. We identified a bunch of requirements and aspirational goals, and then various technical options. And the end result of these goals, the mandate to develop an environmentally sustainable method to treat the liquid waste that is produced by the village. Certainly no argument with that, but that is affordable and ideally economically productive, environmentally enhancing, and socially beneficial. It is unusual that a wastewater treatment plant, that somehow it should be socially beneficial, other than turning dirty water into clean, that it could deliver benefits above that. But that became an aspirational goal. We want it to enhance the environment, not just protect it, and be socially beneficial. Economically productive would be great, and affordable, well, more on that later. No. And what did we come up with for our preferred option? The upgraded lagoon. And the reason for this is the lagoons can handle these high wet weather flows. Mechanical treatment plants are designed for quite a narrow flow range. Lagoons can handle a lot of flow, but only medium quality treatment. The post-lagoon chemical mechanical treatment gives us the high quality water. It still has a limited flow range, and which is what we have most of the time, but we still have those wet weather days, and all flow needs to be disinfected to kill the pathogens. So most of the time we get high quality treatment and disinfection, and then in the really wet weather, part of the flow gets high quality treatment and disinfection, and the remainder of the flow gets medium quality treatment and disinfection. We've got our aspirational goals that we had planned for, more about those in a minute. And the intention was we'd build for those when we get funding, grant funding to do so. And this lent itself to a two-phase project. So here's the first phase. Regulatory compliance. It's not really that inspiring just to say we are building this simply to satisfy the regulatory rules, but we are required by law to meet the regulatory rules. So this was the minimum that we could do. Improve the function of the lagoons, build the post-lagoon treatment, solid separation. The phosphorus is the main nutrient that causes algae blooms. We need chemical treatment to take that out, and then disinfection to kill the pathogens. So that was the very minimum. And even though those are just simple boxes, there's a lot of complexity to build that stuff. But on this plan, those are the boxes. The aspirational goals: higher quality treatment, like the tertiary filtration. Also, this concept of the biochar media reed bed, a charcoal media wood-based charcoal that actually absorbs and degrades certain pharmaceuticals and other contaminants that make it through the treatment system. So this is where we're doing environmental enhancement, additional protection. And then that clean water goes into the wetland and it restores natural wet conditions to the wetland in summer. So there's another environmental enhancement. And it makes the creek itself cleaner too. And then the end part of it was to improve the public access to this improved wetland. We're going to make it really nice. We want people to be able to see it. So there's a social benefit coming out of that. So that was the plan that we finalized in 2018. And here we are 6 years later. What does the implementation look like? It's pretty close, but slightly different. So our treatment plant is down at the bottom here, those same boxes for separation, tertiary treatment, disinfection. The treated water will go into a channel out to the left here. The reed bed is roughly where we'd originally planned it to be. The water goes into these ponds. And in summertime, these ponds don't receive any flow, so they'll actually have a flow of high quality water through them, then through the wetland area. And then over here in Maple Lake Creek, a couple of changes that came in. It was determined that we need to do a seismic improvement to the lagoons here. The lagoon berm right next to the creek channel is a risk, and the best way to mitigate that is to fill in the creek channel. But in order to fill in the creek channel, we have to create a new one first, and that's what we're doing over on the side here. So some additional scope items that came in once we started doing the detailed study of the proposed system. And then down the very bottom here, when we have those extreme wet weather flows, that water gets disinfection, but not the tertiary treatment, and goes into the creek here. And we hope to remove those flows in the future by doing works to reduce wet weather flows. So that's the grand plan, how it's going to look when it all gets built. The budget. So one of the goals was affordable, and at the time we came up with this budget of $11.7 million in 2018, and that seemed fairly affordable, and even more so if we get grant funding. But things have, changed since then, post-COVID inflation on everything, and just the complexity of implementing what we wanted to do. It's turned out to cost a lot more, and this is not actually the hard and fast final number. So the cost has doubled since then. It's not going to double again, but we won't know the final cost until it's actually built. But in any case, it's expensive. It's the largest capital project in Cumberland's history, and arguably the most important too. So back now to the LWMP. We've got our preferred option. We know what we're doing. It's going to cost. Now we can complete the other components of the Stage 3 liquid waste management plan. A bit more study on the Trent and Maple Lake Creek for the impacts of this treatment system or the benefits of it. Update master plans for the village. Reducing these wet weather flows. We have to get those down, and that's mainly removing the remaining old combined storm sanitary sewers and have separate storm sewers and separate sanitary sewers like most towns have. Get the committee going again, which have our first meeting in very soon. More public engagement. Here we are today, and we will probably have another session in the future. First Nations, then work with Ministry of Environment on finalising the regulations and sort out the financial plan for the future works. And on that note, it's interesting. This is an alternative way of getting authorization to borrow money. Normally, the municipality has to do a referendum or an alternate approval process, but the liquid waste management plan is a separate and specific one created by the province. And because there's been so much study and public involvement, there is deemed to be sufficient public consultation, and the completed plan confers the borrowing authority. And that way the municipality can implement it whether or not you get grant funding. We certainly try to, and we've already got over 10 million of it for the current project. But for future works, we'll have the borrowing authority, and then we'll go out and try and get as much grant funding as we can still for these future works. So to complete the overall plan itself, we end up with a report that captures all of this stuff, a voluminous report. as these statutory documents are. That'll go through the committee for the approval. Cumberland Council has to sign off on it, and then it gets submitted to the Ministry of Environment. And once it's submitted, they then have their process, which of course involves reviewing the plan. There may or may not be some changes that are made, depending on what the review shows. Operational certificate, which is the official regulatory instrument. It's not a permit, but it does the same thing. It specifies treatment quality, monitoring requirements, contingency procedures, etc., etc. And then it finally gets signed off by the Minister of Environment and is implemented. And at that point, the old permit, dating back to 1967, gets cancelled. So we'll have a new treatment system and a new regulatory authorization for it. And then the implementation of the plan, we'll have already implemented the new system, which is great. Operate it, monitor the receiving environment to see how much it improves. That should say carry out, not our, but they are our works. Works to reduce wet weather flows, the sanitary separation, and other works on reducing wet weather inflow. We'll then have a new committee in the future to review the plan and how it's progressing, and that at 5-year intervals you report back to the Ministry of Environment. So that's the way the plan goes. It guides the wastewater here for the future, and basically to do what the plan says. And if it's working well, you carry on, and if there's changes needed, then that's worked out with the ministry. So bring it all to an end. Well, it's actually not the end. The completion of the liquid waste management plan is the completion of the plan, but it is not the end of the journey, because as long as Cumberland's here, there is wastewater happening. But everybody who's been involved will be happy to close the page on this 25-year-long effort for upgrading treatment. And then for Cumberland's future growth, it's taken care of for roughly the next 20 years, and the environment's taken care of. And that was the original goal. So it's great to be able to then achieve what you set out to achieve. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul, for that overview and all that information. For those of you who are watching, we hope you understand a little bit more about where we're at on the LWMP process and answered a few of your questions. We really encourage you to share this presentation or let other people know that it is live and viewable, so that everybody in the community can have a sense of this important update and the work that we have ahead of us to the end of the year. Also, you can follow along with the project and the process. You can ask questions and share comments on the online engagement portal that's been set up for this project. So you can find that at engagecomoxvalley.ca /Cumberland-lwmp. And so that's where we'll be sharing updates. You can sign up for email notices too when there's new information shared there. And it's just a great way to be able to interact with the process as we move forward. So with that, I say thank you very much to everybody for taking the time to hear today, and we hope to see you and talk with you along this process as it moves forward. Thank you again, Paul.
Thank you.